We are officially recording. Well, welcome everybody to the Art of Human podcast, the podcast dedicated to celebrating humanhood via insightful, unique perspective from human beings of all walks of life. Today we have your name. You say Johanna, right?
Yes.
Johanna Vargas.
Vargas, yeah. Often
Var-
the spelling gets messed up a lot because it's got an H in it. So all my life I've heard it's Johanna, right? And I say no.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Usually, how's the name usually spelled?
Well, I'm biased, so the way that my name is spelled with an H, Johanna, that's the correct way to spell it. And then since I'm Hispanic, you don't pronounce the H, so it's just
Oh,
Johanna
and then your last name in Spanish, you would say Vargas, ¿verdad?
Vargas. Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, look, I showed you I speak a little Spanish.
You do speak a little Spanish, yeah.
Tell me and tell the listeners a little bit about you, Johanna.
Well,
And like
I
I mean, tell us about you, like whatever you feel would give us the most context and like the most feel for who you are, right? It doesn't have to be like just whatever you want.
I'm a hippie.
You're a
That's pretty
hippie?
much that's pretty much what my friends would say. I'm a hippie, just because I a big proponent of like mental health, removing the stigma
Mm,
about going to therapy or receiving counseling, about meditation, mindfulness, exercise, breathing exercise. That's something that I've always promoted in my social circle. So that tends to be how I label myself as. I'm a hippie, but I'm also um I don't know, just educated, I guess. Just a hippie, and yeah, that's pretty much how I've always been. You're like making me go back into like high school and stuff, and
That's fine.
um
You can go back as far as back
all
as you
the
want.
all the PTSD from having to explain my
Oh,
viewpoints. Yeah. But
yeah,
like
no.
I remember since like middle school, I've always been this way. I've always been like um outspoken, non-believer, atheist. So that's pretty much what I've always been known as my whole life since I can remember, being an atheist and being a big proponent of democracy and leadership and all that. So that's how I am. But
Hmm.
in terms of how like the trajectory of my career has been going, it's been towards like the humanities and like social services, and so that's what my purpose has been thus far in my life is social services and being in service to others, because I think that's my purpose.
Okay. And did you know from like a really, really young age that this is kind of what you felt your purpose was, and you felt like you were kind of different from most people? Did you feel that way from an extremely young age?
Did you always feel like you were a freak? No.
No, I'm not a freak.
uh,
I don't think you're a
I
freak.
thought I was going to be the first female president, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like,
When did you start thinking that, and do you still think that?
so I started thinking that since like first grade.
Mm.
Because I've always been like a smartass. I focused maybe too much of my energy into being the that kid that gets straight A's and raises their hand all the time and just has something to say all the time. And as I got older, I realized that hey, maybe um, politics is not for me because I'm hot-headed. Um,
Mm.
that's like a stable character trait of mine, is that when it comes to like arguments and stuff, like I couldn't be a good lawyer because I'm gonna cut you off, or I don't know. I like the arguing part of it without exactly taking turns or like being polite. But and then I wanted, as a kid also, I had this dream that hey, I have all this medical knowledge, it tends to stick to me, why not be a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then uh enter high school and I get into my psychology course. You didn't go to Bloomington High School, right? You did?
No, no.
No? Okay. Well, shout out to those people who went to Bloomington High School because they know the teacher that I'll be talking about, Mr. Erickson, who I believe still works at the high school, but he was my AP economics teacher as well as my AP psychology teacher in high school at Bloomington. BHS. Class of 2010. I remember that. Do you remember your class yell and how awkward it was to like yell it?
What do you mean? What do you mean it was awkward to yell it?
Because it was like above 2010. So anything above 2010 was like lame for like classes to like shout like when you're repping your, when you graduate. Because you know how like, well, ours was like 2010, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And then you keep repeating it. But like, I remember we would have, okay, so this is kind of dumb, but I remember in high school, we would have like these shouting matches in the auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to rep your graduating class in the year and everything. So the gym would be separated by like class year, like graduating year, and so like you'd have like all the little freshmen in one corner, the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and they would like take turns like shouting their graduating class year. So ours was 2010s, and it sounded the nicest. And like the juniors were like 2011, 2011, and it sounded like sounded lame. And then like 2012 is actually pretty tight of like a graduating class
The way it
shout,
sounds?
but like the way it sounds. But then yeah, that's just one of the little memories that I have from high school. Yeah.
That's pretty
But
interesting.
since we're on the on the subject of introductions and stuff, just like a nerd hippie. That's my final answer, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Yeah.
A nerd hippie.
Nerd hippie.
Some people recently have kind of called me a hippie too. My last job, I worked at an eating disorder clinic for about 6 or 7 months. And at one point, I had a few of my coworkers saying that I was like a hippie. And I don't know. I don't really know exactly what the term hippie implies, but I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know. I think hippie just means that you kind of go outside the box. Maybe you don't follow the norm. I don't know.
Well,
Or what would you
the word hippie originated as a it's a derogatory term.
for?
For the people who were against the war.
Oh, okay.
And people who were proponents of peace. And you know what? You don't have to quote me on it. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm not too sure if that's how the word hippie originated, but I want to say that it was because it was for people who were against the war and for peace and love. And it was the 60s, and it was the era of when the government started releasing the information about like acid and doing all their studies on soldiers with acid and LSD and all that stuff.
What came about those studies? I think I've heard something about that vaguely, but I didn't hear details.
So we learned from those studies that it was not just conscience enhancing effects that we discovered that LSD had, and magic mushrooms, which the psilocybin, which is the psychotropic effect in the hallucinogen, but it led to a lot more like top secret case studies on these drugs that as soon as they hit the market, that is where a lot of the political unrest came about, because the public had access to this, and it was because the government had basically created it. You don't find, at least I don't think so, you don't find LSD growing from the ground. It has to be manufactured by man. But stuff like but stuff like the psilocybin, stuff that you find in magic mushrooms, and then DMT as well, I think was another in DHT, or maybe I'm mispronouncing. There's a lot of letters
Mm-hmm.
for all of these hallucinogens and stuff, but
Well, I know DMT. That's one drug that I've heard about, and I was actually talking about it on the last 2 podcasts ago with my friend Cheyenne.
you mean your friend Joe Rogan,
Joe Rogan? Yeah.
our Lord and Savior?
No, I mean, that's where I first heard about like DMT, and I got a little more insight with regard to like psychedelic drugs. And I mean, obviously I've heard it from like people in person, in person. Um, I know like one theory is that like the human mind, obviously we came from like monkeys or something of that sort, and that we were
If
able
you're a
to
proponent of evolution, yeah,
okay,
which we
assuming
both
that
are, which we both are.
yeah, I think we are.
Yeah, but trigger warning.
um so do you think it's possible that these kind of psychedelics that you find in nature are what helped like the evolutionary process of our species to become as intelligent as we are today?
I think that I agree with that statement, but I also think that it led to a lot of other drugs that were created as a result of that have led to like the opioid crisis. It certainly helped for expanding the mind, expanding the consciousness. I'm totally for it. I know that where was it? It's up north. A city just legalized the use of psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, and it's Santa Cruz. The city of
Oh.
Santa Cruz now has recently, I think this was around the time, I think it was either in March or April, that the news came out that Santa Cruz had now made it legal to use psilocybin, magic mushrooms. Kind of the same thing happened during the pandemic too, where the use of THC cannabis became like an essential thing that people needed during a crisis.
Yeah.
Which 5 years ago we would have never thought that. We would have never have imagined that that marijuana would be an essential thing that people are allowed to do during this time, this uncertain time.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's gotten to the point where marijuana is seen as essential, then it obviously has significance in the health of a human being, or if it is seen as something beneficial to de-stress or things of that sort. Would
Or
you go ahead?
or it could be, if you're like a pessimist like me, and kind of delve into the not the occult, and not conspiracy theories, but if you look at like the numbers of how much revenue the marijuana industry is bringing into other states that have legalized it, it's, hey, our economy is going to shit, but you know what, let's just keep this going, because I know people are going to want it in California, because nobody wants to stay indoors in California. Let's keep pumping the economy with cannabis money, which people are for sure going to be consuming during this crisis, and let's make some money off of that, so our economy doesn't completely collapse in California. So I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Keep your mind open. That's it.
But wasn't marijuana already legal in the majority of the states before the pandemic started?
Not all states. So only some states have it state legalized, federally still legal. But in California, it was one of the businesses that were deemed essential, which is, it's interesting to think about. It's a little
Yeah.
interesting.
And was marijuana deemed essential in every single state, or are the things that are oh, okay. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure how that all works.
So the states that have it legalized, they're doing fine, because during this crisis, it becomes essential for them, for those economies, just because it brings in so much revenue. Um, so I can only speak for California, Colorado, Oregon. Has it legalized? maybe. I
I'm
think
not sure. Don't
there's
worry
only
about it.
there's only like a handful. I think Michigan too. Michigan, maybe one of those states. But yeah,
Hmm. So I don't know. I'm curious just because I know you told us at the start that you're someone who's been into mental health and you've been trying to get rid of the stigma of that, mental health is a real thing that affects us as human beings. And I agree with you. I do think that there's a stigma. I think, you being Hispanic, me being raised in a Hispanic household, I think we both know that in the culture, in Mexican culture, just Hispanic culture, usually parents don't see like mental health being a big thing or being a real thing, I guess would be the better way to say it. I think especially like my parents are pretty like progressive, I guess, in some ways. So I think they're starting to like, oh, my dad for sure is like open to that. But yeah, just tell me how you've been trying to bring more awareness and like defeat the stigma. Like what have you been doing to do that?
I talk about it freely. I talk about my own mental health to all of my friends. When I was 20, 26, 25, 26 is when I really started to go deeper into my own mental health. And at 26, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
generalized anxiety disorder and depression. So it's personal experiences along with the education that I already had in high school and in college, and then from internships in college, working with fellow college students that were also undergoing anxiety, and being their counselor as a not counselor, I was a biofeedback technician. And biofeedback, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's like it's controllable exercises that you can implement into your daily life that will help reduce like the physical symptoms of stress and anxiety, like sweaty palms and rapid heartbeat and all that. And so biofeedback is when they put all those sensors on your hands, and you're able to use different breathing techniques, or have like guided meditation. So that was me practicing that. It's kind of like psychotherapy. It's like meditation and stuff like that. And from there, that's when my interest in mental health and being a huge proponent for, hey, even if you think you're healthy, even if you think that you have a successful life, you probably have emotional baggage that you need to straighten out. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody should be in therapy is what I believe. And therapy, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Freudian thing where they have you lay down on a couch and you have to get hypnotized, or you have to tell me all of your secrets, tell me your sins. And well, the confessional box, which is like for me the original form of therapy, um if it wasn't so exploited and stuff. But that's a whole other conversation. The Catholic version of therapy is the confession. But
Mm.
fast forward to modern therapy, which is with a social worker, with a clinical psychologist, with psychologists, psychiatrists. I have a psychiatrist, and I have it's very similar to what I do as in my day-to-day, in my 9 to 5. But of course I don't have like PhD licensure, all that stuff, but I still try to push a lot of that, of my past experiences with my day-to-day, because I know what it's like to be at your lowest. I know what it's like to feel that you're worthless. I know what it feels like to be in like a mental like grave, and you're in it and you're stuck and you can't get out. And you learn different ways to get yourself out, hopefully, because nobody can take you out of that. And this is just me like illustrating kind of what depression is like a spiraling. It's like spiraling. When you have a mental spiral, you go through a moment where it's just everything's falling apart, and you can get yourself out of there. but of course you need to be really strong as well.
So
I'm not sure how much experience you have with therapy. I don't know if you've ever been to like a session, but it's definitely something that I encourage everyone to try at least once in their life.
Yeah, I want to hear more about you, but yeah, I did go to therapy back in college. I went for about, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 months. It wasn't like too consistent. I think I would go like every other week or something, and then during the summertime I didn't go. I felt like it was nice, definitely. I think one of the components of therapy that's really helpful, and probably, it's something that anybody, you can do it really with anybody. It doesn't have to be someone who's licensed. It's just people asking you questions. Like there's something extremely therapeutic about someone asking you questions and them simply hearing you out without judging you, without even trying to give you too much feedback, but just asking you questions and asking you questions, and then you just kind of like letting everything out. Because from my experience, I feel like a lot of
It's catharsis.
It's what?
Catharsis. It's a cathartic moment. Catharsis just means that it's like relieving. It's like heartwarming. It's something that like you're unloading a lot of stress off of you by just doing talk therapy. You know? And a therapist, they won't ever give you like, you shouldn't go into a therapy session demanding answers, because they will never give you the answers. We're a big mirror. We're a mirror. Like our faces are mirrors, and we're just pointing it at you because you have the answer. We know you do. You have the answer. It's inside you, but it's our job to help you like dig away and then find those gems, those diamonds that are your salvation. Because at the end of the day, nobody can get you out of a funk other than yourself. But that doesn't mean that you're alone in a fight, you know what I mean? It's important to have your support system, and that could be a friend, a teacher, professor, coworker, your dog,
Do you mind telling me, and I guess obviously the listeners aren't listening right now, but eventually people will listen to this. Do you mind telling us about kind of your story with a little more like detail? Just because me personally, I feel like what brings people a lot of value is just hearing like real life experiences, because a lot of times, we realize through listening to other people's experiences that we're not so different. A lot of us go through the same thing.
Yeah. So my experience in terms of,
and sorry if it's like really really you don't have to go into anything too crazy, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
I'm gonna change the names, and I'm gonna use, what are those called, pseudonyms? No, it's something that I think manifests itself in different ways. Your mental health goes through a variety of phases. It goes through waves. For some very fortunate people, they never have, or at least they never acknowledge that they have a mental health problem. Some people ignore it. They choose to ignore it, and then it manifests itself in different destructive ways, in the form of bad habits, of vices, of addiction. And all of that is, of course, because you don't have a balance in your life, right? At least that's what the studies are indicating, is I'm not going to be able to tell you like the names of these studies or the years or the scientists involved or research, but I can tell you, like basic summary of like stuff from like my neuroscience classes and all that stuff. It's an imbalance, and it's going to happen, and you need to be able to identify the causes, the triggers, and you need to be able to seek discomfort and push yourself and challenge yourself to change how you think and how you feel, because your brain is in like dire need of being rewired. And those are the exact words that for example, when I first started going to therapy when I was 27, 26, is, she sat me down, and I of course was like, I want to say I was at my lowest. um and it came to a head like towards the end of college, like when you're senior year and you're freaking out about what the future is going to hold. And let's say you don't have, a job lined up, you don't have a career trajectory, like going through college. And a lot of kids go through that, is that right after college their mental stability, I don't know if this is the case just for our generation or the generation before us, but you hit a mental, like you're just going down. You're just going into decline, unless of course you're super prepared for the world. Then, congrats to you, like disregard, right? But there's people like me who are, they worry, they over worry about everything, they overanalyze stuff, and then um, they never think. Especially in my case, I was very arrogant and prideful, and I didn't realize that me not expressing myself the way that I should be was causing me to become depressed. And my anxiety was going untreated. I just thought that, hey, this is just part of growing up and it's part of being an adult. And you need to find the answers are out there. You just need to go and push yourself and put yourself out there in the world, and you'll get those answers, right?
Real quick. When you said you weren't expressing yourself the way you should be, do you mean you weren't expressing yourself honestly? Is that all you mean?
No,
Like you weren't
it
being
was,
real with yourself? Is that what you mean?
yes, I wasn't being the genuine me that I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
um and a lot of it was out of anxiety, out of fear of
Judge
rejection, out of fear of
judgment.
judgment from others, from my significant other at the time. um had a very like rigid and objective form of thinking. And so sometimes you lose yourself in your significant other, in the way that they think. And if, let's say, for example, you're the type of person who needs to sing, needs to shout, needs to be, do big things loud, and likes to just dance and do all those things, if you quiet that, if you silence it, it's gonna, the repercussions of it are gonna manifest themselves in ways that are self-destructive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, it was, um i'm not I'm not doing these social things, and I'm naturally extroverted. I turned into an introvert, and I think that was what kind of did me in, especially after college and through those times, through that period of time of post college, and then right up to the point where I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. um, those years were a blur, like now that I look back at it, because there was hardly any introspection in my life. And I and that is like another huge reason why I'm like, hey, you need to look inward, especially when you have a lot of free time. Like right now, everybody's got a lot of free time, instead of building fireworks, you ought to be introspecting, and let my dog sleep and not have more PTSD, please. But um introspection is super important, because it's true what they say, you know thyself. You have to, that should be one of the big tasks that you accomplish in your life, because if you don't know yourself, you will not be able to appreciate your life and how it is lived, because you're just you're just a filler person. Do you know, have you ever heard that term, filler people?
No.
So um I'm not sure if I'm giving like the correct definition of it, or at least like the urban dictionary of it, but I believe that there are just some people who do not look inward at all, and they're filler people in the world, in your life.
And as
And
in, does that mean that they fill in almost as if they just imitate what they're around, but they're not being their genuine self? they're just filling in whatever they feel like.
They fill
Go
a
ahead.
void.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're on it, and I think that you don't want to be like, you don't want to use like harsh terms to describe it. But it's okay. I can. Just filler people. Filler people. They never leave their comfort zone.
Mm.
They they uh, they feel as if their lives are not extraordinary, that they're never destined for great things, and they're just going to do what's comfortable, stay in your safe place where nobody can judge you. You never leave the house. You don't push yourself to feel discomfort, to have that challenge of, hey, I'm I'm very nervous about giving like a public speech somewhere, or just trying new things. People who are like extremely opposed to anything social. It could be because, yeah, they have a lot of social anxiety, but that should not that should not be an excuse as to why you are not pursuing a full life. You know what I mean? I think you know where I'm going with this.
No, I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah. So it's stuff like this, your podcast, more people talking about how normalized therapy should be, how there should no longer be a negative
Connotation.
stigma attached to mental health in receiving mental health services in whatever form that might be. you know
Yeah.
I remember at my college, we would have, during finals week, we would have a day in a quarter where they'll just bring in like a whole bunch of dogs, right? And they're all therapy dogs, and like students would just flock, right, to just pet these dogs and lower their stress levels. That's one social way that you can start to lower the negative view on receiving therapy, because it's, for such a long time, it's just been associated with people who are crazy, right? Yeah,
Yeah, or
only crazy
someone
people
who's
go to
like
therapy.
someone who's weak, I feel like.
Someone who's weak, and that's also a cultural thing that you and I had to grow up by. You less so, because it sounds like your parents are from a younger generation than my parents.
How old are your parents?
Let's see, dad was born 64.
My parents were both born in 1960.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. um yeah, it could be a geographical thing.
Yeah, where are your parents from?
Dad is from Guadalajara. Mom's from Michoacan.
Okay. My dad's from the Dominican Republic. My mom's from Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
They both came to the United States when they were about, well, my mom, living at the, TJ's at the border of California. She would come, I think, starting like 17, 18, and then she didn't move here until she married my dad when she was about
Mm-hmm.
30. But yeah, I mean, I think it just depends. Like my whole family situation is like a kind of unique dynamic where both my parents were never too like, they never would not overemphasize, but they were never super high emphasis on like being prideful of their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents got divorced when I was about 6, and so once they split up, then we didn't have like that traditional upbringing, where you have mom and dad, and you do certain things every holiday. If you go to my mom's house, there's not like too many. There's not like, you don't have like,
Authoritarian.
no, I mean, we don't have like Rosa de Guadalupe on the, or Maria de Guadalupe. How do you say it again? How do you
Yeah,
say it again?
Virgencita. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have like Virgin Mary like on the wall. We don't have like a lot of religious things, or I don't know. It's just a very just kind of contemporary household. My mom just likes to have it clean, and then my dad, he just kind of, he has like the American flag and all that. He was in the Marines, but what I'm
There you
trying to
have it. There you have it.
yeah, but
A strong sense of nationalism, and then the dynamic of how you grew up.
it's just very free. Like
Yes.
it
Yes.
wasn't. And then me and my brother, I have one brother, and so we're two guys. It's not two girls. And then my dad was always like trying to push us to kind of venture out from a young age. You know, when I was like probably 6 or 7, he already had me on his lap, like basically driving, you know, pretend driving.
Yeah, same.
My dad, you know, like my parents got divorced, and then we're having to pack a bag to then go with dad for a week and then come back with my mom. So it's kind of like doing more grown up type things at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, yeah. And then just, I guess just by coincidence, my parents are fairly open minded. No,
Mm-hmm.
my dad's extremely open minded. My dad's super into like UFOs and things of that sort. And I think my mom, well, she has 2 kids that are extremely open minded, so she's kind of slowly having to open her mind too.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
so yeah, I know this is kind of a weird, like, I kind of talked for a little bit. I feel like you're on a really good point, but I guess the whole purpose of me explaining that was that, um,
You were
yeah,
practicing introspection. It's fine.
yeah, basically, you
Yes.
know, we're doing what we're talking about.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's very good to practice that. It's what a lot of people, I believe, need some motivation for is to and I don't want to sound too hippie-ish, but to have some sort of out-of-body experience. And that doesn't mean like sleep paralysis or anything like that, or a ghost comes to visit you when you go to bed or something. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an out-of-body experience, which it could be the way that you're thinking. If you can successfully rewire your brain to be able to not objectify your life, but to consider life beyond your own perspective, and to kind of exert your consciousness to other things in order to appreciate and understand what your life is. And that could be thinking of your life, how does your brother see you? How does your best friend see you? If they were to speak on your life and your personality, and how you express yourself. And you'll find a lot of the times that they see you in ways that you do not see yourself.
Mm,
And that disagreement, that unlevelness of how you see yourself versus how others see you, is where I think people need more resources. They need to know that there are things that can help them to reach that point where they can look beyond their own perspective. Because as you can tell right now, we're in a time where people are not thinking about um, they're not practicing empathy, you know.
mm-hmm.
They're not practicing mindfulness. And what we're seeing is a population, especially in the US, a population of people that are finally feeling that like overwhelming sense of having to just explode out and be heard, right? Because now is the time where everyone is coming out with confessions, with it creates secret time. Like, this is what happened to me. Everybody else is being heard. I'm gonna tell my story because everyone's being heard now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something's happened to everybody, so let's talk about it. And people are finally doing that, you know. And there's a lot of people who, and I'm very grateful for it, there's a lot of people who have this power. They have a lot of influence over the people who watch them, who listen to them, who see them in movies and stuff. They're finally using their platform to be proponents of going therapy, of racial equality, of their political viewpoints, which is all great. It's one person's opinion, but they're at the very least using the media, which is, you know, notoriously believed to be the fourth branch of the government, is finally coming to a head. And there's like this new wave of politicians that are being groomed for future positions in government, and yeah, and AOC is one of them. You know, that AOC,
AOC, what is that?
Ocasio-Cortez.
I don't know who that is.
AOC, she's Congresswoman. She's from Brooklyn. AOC, I'm sure you know who she is. She's like the loudest Brooklyn Congresswoman right now, who's making herself known. She's like, look her up on your phone. Like, if you were to look up a picture of her, I'm sure you're like, oh, it's that lady who's always on the news talking about how she supports Bernie and all this stuff. It's AOC. She's I believe 30, 32, around there. She's very young. And she's very quickly gaining all these accolades. You know, the Republicans hate her because they're like, oh, she's just this young Latina who the media is using as a mouthpiece for their left-leaning agenda. You know, did you look up a picture of her?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I
you don't recognize her?
I feel like maybe I've seen her like once, but
Oh yeah, she. I mean,
I
her.
know I'll
Her
be
voice
honest.
is. Huh?
I was gonna say like ever since this whole like Black Lives Matter movement started, ever since the death of George Floyd, like I've really been dedicating a lot more time to learning about slavery, learning about just like my rights and things of that sort. But I'll be honest, like before that, I was so obsessed with athletics and school and academics and all that that I wasn't too educated with regard to politics. I mean, I took a class in college, obviously, but yeah, I'm not the most politically informed person, but I'm putting in an effort to learn. So
That's great, and you're not alone in that pursuit. I think a lot of people right now are being, since the media is showing us this trend of a health crisis being turned into political viewpoints, political statements, like the the fact that somebody can go out wearing a mask turns into a political statement. You know, if you wear the mask, a lot of Republicans see that as you being a staunch Democrat and you're left leaning, and you're going to be voting for Biden, you know, come election time. And there's other people who think that the virus is, and it has been affecting disproportionately higher number in the African American community. And there's people who are against the protests going on because we're seeing a surge of a second, third wave of COVID cases being confirmed every day. So there's a lot of people right now who are being turned on to politics because it's being shoved down our throats right now. And people have to, they got to get woke. And I don't mean that in a bad way. People have to wake up and start learning their history and start being nerdy, you know, doing the stuff that they always thought was lame, because that's the future. If you're not cognizant of what's going on in your environment, and you're not networking, and you're not in the know of what's relevant, what's not relevant, it's very hard to make it out there, to leave your mark on society if you're not like, I guess, well informed.
yeah,
You know?
I agree, and I think the way that this kind of talking about politics and talking about being informed with regard to your environment, I feel like the way that all kind of ties back to something basic like mental health and just being a healthy, happy human being. It's because if you're not aware of what's going on, if you're not aware of the bad, you're not aware of the good, then you can't, from my experience, it's like you can't really fully be a compassionate human being. Because if there's things going out in the world, in the city, in the country that you live in, a lot of things which are restraining certain group of people from living a happy, healthy life. And if you're not even aware of that, and if you're not doing anything to help change that and create a more equal place to live, then you're missing a huge component of like compassion, I feel, you know. And that's
Exactly.
so I feel like, you know, although I used to be somebody who would say like, oh, I don't really care too much about politics and all that, and I just kind of live my day to day. But, you know, although this podcast, I don't think I'm going to put an emphasis on like always talking about politics, but I think it's, if you do live in the United States or pretty much wherever you live, so long as it's like a democracy or whatever, where you do have a voice,
You can't ignore it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you shouldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
Now everybody's aware of what's going on and how it's legitimately going on in 2020. And like I said, fundamentally, the reason I think it's good to bring awareness to this is because as a human being, in order to really be compassionate and happy, like you have to have empathy for everybody, all your brothers and sisters. And if you're not racist, you know, and if you see us as being as one human race, then, you know, if you live in the United States, then you know, and if you're over the age of 18, then being educated with regard to your rights and being educated with regard to what's going on in the country, I think that's important, even at a psychological level. But I do think with everything going on right now, I think there's certain people who already had mental illness before this whole thing started, the pandemic, the
Yeah, I'm one of
protesting.
them.
So it's like everybody's at a different stage in their life. So I wouldn't ever expect the same thing from everybody. I mean, I don't expect anything. I don't expect anything from anybody. That's the kind of life that I'm trying to live. But like, I don't think people should be expecting the same of everybody because everyone's going through a different stage in their life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like everyone has different stuff going on. If you have depression, if you have anxiety, like diagnosed and it's at a really high level, I'm not going to tell you, hey, you should start looking into politics and you should start going to protests and stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's at a different stage in their life, but if you are like capable, then it's good to practice, you know, getting educated and having compassion and voicing yourself, although it might make you uncomfortable, because
But you need that.
yeah, it's gonna it
You need
I
that. You need
funny
that push.
enough, although it might be discomforting in the moment, it's going to make you feel better. Like even if you might have to sleep on it, but the next day I guarantee you're gonna feel better because you feel like you're connected with something bigger than just yourself.
And you must feel that connection because it's innate. Feeling a connection, feeling belongingness, feeling like you are part of something bigger than yourself is an innate feeling that you have as a human. Humans have evolved to be social creatures. We are not meant to be alone. And there's a lot of people who are big proponents for living a solitary life. And let me tell you, I think that it's possible, but it's very rare, and you have to be a certain type of person to live that sort of, you know, solo lifestyle and living in isolation and not connecting with your outside world.
Who what group of people are good with that?
People like the Unabomber,
Like the what?
the Unabomber. You heard of the
Uh,
Unabomber?
yeah, that sounds
Um,
familiar, but
that's
educate me again.
yeah, that could be the topic of another podcast. We'll do deep dives into psychopathy and people, you know, famous people who went crazy because they were living alone and they exhibited psychopathy, and they're very smart people, extremely intelligent people, but they are unbalanced, you
So
know.
who's the Unabomber?
The Unabomber, his name, his Christian name is Ted Kaczynski. I'm sure you know who he is, or you've heard of him. He would send through the mail bombs to particularly specific people that he knew.
That sounds familiar,
Um,
yeah.
and he was really smart. He was a mathematician. I think he was a professor at some point at a university. Ted Kaczynski, and a statistician or mathematician, one of those things. But he's very good at math, very good with numbers. He he's also like engineering and all that stuff. Super smart guy. Lived by himself in the woods. And it, the way that he approached um, expressing himself, fulfilling his life purpose was to send bombs in packages, in mail packages, and sending them to like a judge or sending them to like a cop or some like, and then sometimes it would just be like random people, but it causes big thing, and it was over a span of several years. So like the CIA, FBI, one of those cop people, they were looking for him for such a long time because because he's sending bombs to people, and people start getting really really scared.
That was within our lifetime, right? Wasn't that like semi-recent?
Uh, I believe this was the starting from the 70s going into the 80s.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was not alive.
On Yeah, there's several shows that are about the Unabomber, about Ted Kaczynski. One of them is with Sam Worthington. It's called Manhunt. The guy that came out in Avatar, Sam Worthington, like the guy, the main dude, the actor.
You talking about Avatar the blue people or Avatar
The blue
the?
people.
Oh,
Yeah, the
okay.
blue people. Well, not the horrible movie. The other movie that was horrible.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of, like, if you don't want to like read on it or something, there's the show Manhunt, or is it Mindhunter? No, Mindhunter is about other stuff. And then that show, have you heard of Mindhunter?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's sort of the same, but it's this guy who is gathering all this information about psychopaths and serial killers and all that, and he helps track them down, because he studies psychopathy and all that. Mindhunter on Netflix. For your listeners, if they're at all interested in like criminal justice or like law and psychology, stuff like that. Which is a class, by the way. Law and psychology is a class that I like loved in college, and I would be one of those annoying students who would like talk all the time about that and argue, just because it's like, did you hear that?
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
a firework.
I would not even call that a firework.
No bomb.
That was yeah, like those sort of fireworks. Those are like the illegal ones. Those are like are they called mortars? I
I'm
think they're
not too
called.
sure.
I don't know, but it's like they have this big tube, and I saw a video of it the other day on Instagram. People are getting real sciencey out here with these fireworks, these pyrotechnics, man. I'm sure that the hospitals are seeing an increase in like people's hands being blown off and stuff, because like these fireworks are like legit bombs, and like they're customized for a larger like bang, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and I follow a lot of like San Bernardino County like Sheriff's Department and like Rialto, where I live, and they've been having all these posts of like illegal fireworks that the police have been seizing every day, because of course people are stuck at home. They don't got shit to do. Let's look up some YouTube tutorials on how to make these mortar shells, man. Like like, oh, like we could talk on that for a whole, talking about the pandemic and cabin fever and feeling like the world's ending, and
Cabin
what's
fever.
cabin fever. It's that feeling of desperation that you need to get out because you've been shut in, you've been isolated for a while. Cabin fever.
That term was made prior to COVID, right?
Of course, yeah. There's been movies made that are literally called cabin fever, just because people are stuck indoors. It's like a good example is right now, I guess, the feeling that you're quarantined, that you can't leave your home. You start getting cabin fever, right? There's a lot of people that were laid off that are they don't have jobs right now, and therefore they don't have income, and so they can't really go out, and even if they do go out, everything's closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're just stuck indoors, and that's what that term is called, cabin fever. You just feel like you're about to explode, because you got to get out, because we're social creatures. Like I said, we evolved to be amongst each other, and if we're, like I said, isolation right now is driving some people crazy, and on top of that, you have people who already have pre-existing mental health conditions, like me, and then on top of that, you're experiencing like once in a lifetime thing. This is a pandemic. We're literally living through something that you're gonna find in history books very soon, and that's wild. That's wild to me, at least, to be living through a time like this, and to know like, hey, we were not prepared. So this is going to be an embarrassing chapter in 2020, because our country didn't respond. We weren't prepared for it, and a lot of people lost their lives to it. You know, did you hear that a couple months ago, New York was experiencing so many deaths due to COVID because there's a lot of, you know, older population lives in like the city of New York, not just like the state. They were putting up all of these mobile hospitals down streets, and they were just bringing out their dead. There's just bodies rolling in. They didn't, like, families would not even have the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones because they're for risk of contagion. And like a lot of these people just got, I think that they were what do you call 'em? You run out of space in the morgue, right? So what's the next thing? What are we gonna do? Mass burials? I think that they God, what is that term when you cremation, right? I think they had mass
Mm-hmm.
cremations for their dead because we have these piles of dead bodies, you know, in New York City. And it's just like the hospitals are just tense, and they have, like, what are we doing with all of these bodies that are coming in? Like, that's wild to live through that, to see that. And we have such advanced technology where people are live streaming uh looting, you know, like,
Yeah.
how much shit did you see on Twitter or TikTok of people committing crimes, of people, not just people committing crimes, but people expressing themselves, people protesting, people going through like such a traumatic life event. And guess what? They're live on Instagram, and you can see it. You can experience that with them, that trauma. Like, you know, we really are all in this together. If I'm gonna see some injustice, everyone's gonna know about it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes today, 2020, an interesting time to be alive, because there's all these like um historical or really, you know, like there's a lot of like unprecedented things going on right now. The pandemic, you know, the internet, social media. Like, you know, in the past there's been maybe similar things, but you know, it's never been documented at the same level that it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody has a cell phone, everybody is on social media.
Yeah.
And I guess to bring this back to like mental health, I
Sorry,
think
I go on a lot of tangents.
no, no, you're good, you're good. I think one of the interesting things to deal with nowadays is all the stimulus that there is out, you know? Like right now there's a pandemic, there's a protest, you know, people just having their own personal, maybe financial issues, you know, and then although the pandemic and the protests are going on, you know, just normal
They're
day-to-day
all
life,
tied.
just,
They're
huh?
tied. They're
Yeah, I
tied
mean,
together.
but
Yeah.
then on top of that, it's like you already have your normal day-to-day issues, like if you're in a relationship or, you know, family problems or whatever it might be. So I think something that I do, and something that you know, the people have to be aware of, is just like how much they're consuming, and then how are they digesting what they're consuming, and like really taking the time to be mentally okay with everything, if that makes sense. Like, and doing what's best for you at the moment. Like, so for instance, if I had to give like my little short story regarding my quarantine experience, it's been like, you know, starting off, you're kind of, you know, I was a bit more afraid because you don't know how the whole pandemic's going to turn out. You're hearing so many different things from so many different places. It went from
Mhm.
everything operating at 100% to then like nearly everything shuts down. And then we had the whole thing where people were buying all the toilet paper, and like stores were very low in food. So it's like definitely like a very strange time.
A mob effect.
Yeah. And then, but then there got a certain point in time, maybe about a month into the pandemic, maybe once we got to like April, that like I just knew that I had to go out. Like I would go outside to go for a run, but then I would have to like go beyond that. Like, you know, I would have to go to my parents' house, or I'd have to be a little more dynamic, because I knew that my mental health was definitely going to continue to diminish. And then because your mind and your body are directly connected, I knew that if my mental stability was not there, then physically I was going to be more susceptible to whatever. My
Because
immune system would be more
yeah,
lowered. And
yeah.
then So then it's like, now we're back and now we're in June, and it's like progressively since April, it's like I've been, seeing people more, and I've been, now I've gone to the beach a few times, and it just
You Democrat.
Democrat. I don't know what you mean by that.
Have you seen
Oh, oh,
the
you're saying how
video?
people are protesting at the beach and all that?
No, but it was just a nerdy joke, a political joke, because you going to the beach without, like, since it's so taboo to go out anywhere right
Mm.
now, um, people are assigning a political alliance or a connection to your social acts.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So right now everything's being politicized, you know,
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. So you have people uploading videos of how their actions, them wanting to go out and finally connect with other people and socialize, and then you have this other group of people who are just hating on that. There's this video that I saw of these two Republicans, and I can call them that because they were in the beach and they had like scooters. They were riding scooters out on the beach. Um, so they're scooter people, right? Um, and they have these huge Trump 2020 Make America Great Again flags waving in the wind, and they go up to this group, and so the young lady starts recording because she's being harassed by this couple, and just the fact that they're enjoying the beach and that they're sitting there, they're not hurting anybody, but they got harassed by this couple. I don't want to say couple because it was a couple, but the wife, um, that we will assign the name Karen for now, um, they weren't taking too well. She wasn't taking too well that there were people enjoying the beach and words were exchanged. It got nasty, but like that's another example of how the desire for normalcy, the desire for socialization, for democracy, to get away from a fascist government that the U.S. is quickly turning into, is being exposed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, it all goes back to what I was saying about how the media is now interfering so much in our private lives that it becomes something else, something really ugly that the country is facing right now. And I think that it's something a lot worse may be about to happen this year.
What do you mean by the media is interfering with our life more than before?
Um, so the way that I see it, we have normalized the breach of privacy laws in the country by agreeing to use certain apps that are free, and you can you can see this proof in like people who use the app TikTok. Um, I'm not sure if you heard in the news that basically the people who are backing TikTok is the people who you need to be worried about right now politically, and economically, and that's China. China owns the data of TikTok, and so they now have personal information, private information of Americans, who are using TikTok, because it's a free service, but also you have to think about that quote. If you're using a free service, the product is you, the consumer. The consumer's data, the consumer's information, what they surf on the web, where they live, uh, all of that is being used in a negative way, in a controlling way by the media. So that's what I mean. And
So you're telling me that China's getting all the data and all the insight regarding the way that we Americans, or more so the whole world, uses TikTok, right?
yeah, but China is the one is the one that's storing all of the app's data. Um, I wish I knew like the more technical scientific terms for it, but but that's the gist of it. Is that if you're on TikTok, China knows everything about you. China's probably
Why
still,
would the point I get to, because I'm an optimist regarding, I'm an open-minded person, so of course, like, I know that not everything's good. Of course, I know that there's certain people and that have bad intentions, maybe, or that there is like bad in the world.
mm-hmm.
But what would be the negative part of them having personal information of mine if I'm just quote unquote an ordinary person?
Well, to them we're just numbers, we're just data. But it's that personal information, that data that they have of us, that can help them analyze how our elections will go, how our economy is going, how our actions on that. Like TikTok is, I'm sure you've seen a plethora of people that are on TikTok, because this is probably like the biggest app to like to go this big this fast, and you're seeing all sorts of people from the US using this, and all sorts of people from all over the world. And people, some are not being cognizant, not being mindful of how this free service is actually helping an evil intent that's going to be coming.
What is that?
I don't know. If I knew.
See, but
You know?
you said you were a pessimist, right?
Yeah.
So you're going against an optimist right now, because
Well,
I,
things
because I
tend to
think
get a lot worse before they get better.
I agree, but the reason I like to be optimist is and I think the world should have both perspectives, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if everybody were just like me, we wouldn't have the perspectives that you're dropping right now. So I'm thankful for it. But with regard to like mental health, at least for my mental health, like I want to think of the glass being half full, not half empty. Still being conscious of, possibly the consequences of the negative, but
So
like for me,
you tell me the positive intent that
of
China has by
TikTok,
having all of our data.
I'll tell you the positives of TikTok, which is basically what you're talking about. But TikTok,
Do you think it's right though? Do you think it's right
that
that
China has our information, or just that government officials in
even our
general?
own country, is using our private information for bad things? Bad things are happening in government right now that we don't know of.
Well, I think the idea of what's bad and good is subjective to the person, first off.
How
And I
so?
think also, well, because whatever you say is bad could be seen as good for somebody else. For instance, the people collecting the
Oh, like
data,
what? Yeah, like what
the
we
people
deem.
collecting the data are saying, "Oh, it's great that we're collecting the data because now we're gonna know what the consumers want," and they just use it
Why
as
does
like
China need it?
because of commodities and because of money and like you're
Because of
mentioning the
capitalism, the
economy.
economy. Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
all those. I mean you could, because that's what I'm trying to get at, is that if you have a pessimistic perspective on everything, then you're just gonna have anxiety and you're never gonna live a life. And because if I was thinking about how every little thing that I'm doing, there's someone trying to take advantage of me, being cynical, then I don't know how you can possibly live a happy life. I just don't know. Like, I'd rather die not being ignorant, being educated, and being open to the possibilities like you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but also having faith that 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 human beings are good people, and I'm gonna live my life that way and be compassionate, and I'm not gonna be cynical, because I used to live a cynical life, and that shit fucking sucks. Because you're stingy, you're not compassionate because you think everyone might fuck you over. Like, it's just like you can live your life with one mindset or you can live it with another, and it's likely if you have the pessimistic mindset that you might not live a happy life. And just in my opinion,
Do you
because
think it's
you have to.
possible? Do you think it's possible to live a happy life while being a pessimist? Since you're so open to these possibilities?
Um,
Because I think you can.
I think you can, but you'd have to be an optimist. I mean, I think nothing's 100%. And if you are, then that's really rare. But I think as humans, we're always a combination of many different things. So
How
if you
about
say
how,
if you say you're a pessimist, you also have to have some optimist in you. And if I say I'm mainly
yeah,
optimist,
yeah,
I still have a certain degree of pessimist. Or, you know, like I
a
said,
balance, a balance, right?
it's
Of
always a balance. It's always a I'm not
the
gonna
light
say
side and the dark side of the force. You need to have a balance, right? You got to know one to know the other.
yeah, but the important thing to mention here, which I think I've shown it to myself, is that I'd rather have an instinctual response to believe in optimism than have an instinctual response in pessimism, because then you have control. Like when if your baseline is optimist, then at least you have control to say, okay, you know what, that might be actually something negative. But if your shit's always negative, it's kind of hard to say, you know what, that might be positive.
Hmm.
Like, because I
I see
feel
where
like
you're coming from.
once you get into the negative, or once you create this kind of dysfunctional or unhealthy pattern, then it's kind of hard to even see a little bit of the healthy. But if you're, and the way I could relate this, because I do think there's a lot of universal principles that exist between the physical and the mental. For instance, me as an athlete, right? If I condition my body to move in a dysfunctional way, or not have proper mechanics where I'm putting a lot of the stress onto my joints instead of on my muscle groups,
Right.
everything that I do subconsciously, I will do with that dysfunctional movement, right? But imagine if I train myself to have good mechanics. I train myself to have a proper squat, to utilize my muscles, not put the stress on my joints. And that becomes my instinctual response. Because I have a conscious mind, I can use my conscious mind if in one point in time I did have to do a dysfunctional movement, because, you know, sometimes you have to grab something that's really strange and you might have to put your back in an awkward position. Or for instance, if you have like Olympic weightlifters going for like the world record, it might be beneficial to go into that dysfunctional, like in this context, like dysfunctional position, because for a brief moment it might be advantageous. But like I said, like if you condition yourself to have dysfunctional movement from the baseline, like that's just your instinctual response, it's hard to like just be like, oh, I'm occasionally be like optimist. Like if you had bad form, you can't occasionally just be like, oh, I'm gonna have good form right now. Because when you have that negativity, or when you have bad form, your body gets congested. I think your mind, like let's say mentally wise, your mind's in a very congested state. So it's like you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna be optimist today. Like that's just kind of the way I'm connecting it, because I do find that things that happen in the physical, it's almost the same on the mental aspect. So that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, what do you want to be your instinctual response? For it to be a positive, like expect something positive or have faith in people, or do you want it to not have faith? I feel like if you have faith in people, you can still have the intuition, you could still base your feelings to know, okay, this might not be good. But if your shit's always on the negative, I don't feel like you can be like, oh, you know what, this might actually be good.
So we prepare for the worst, but we expect the best, right?
Yeah, I guess that's one way. Prepare
To
for
find a
the.
balance.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think you
hope for
do.
the best. I'm hoping for the best for our country, but I'm expecting the worst.
You mean you're preparing for the worst, but you're expecting the best?
Sorry. Wait, what did I say?
I think you said you were expecting both. So I was like, what?
Okay, so expecting the
Well, the way I like to think, I like to
preparing
use.
for the worst, but hoping for the best.
Yeah, I like the idea of having faith. You know,
So
because it.
would you say that you're a spiritual person in that sense?
I
Because that would be kind of the only way to have faith is
I
to be spiritual.
recently, because I've been reading this book. It's called The
Hmm.
Genie Within. It's called The Genie Within. It teaches you about your subconscious mind. And I think the subconscious mind, I've explained in one podcast I did, it's called Spiritual Awareness. And I feel like your subconscious is kind of like the the bed sheets that surround like your spirit or your soul, whatever's at the dead center, like whatever it is that just makes you you. And I think that your conscious mind is kind of like the blanket, like it's more external. The subconscious is at a deeper level. Um, And I just feel, and then now because I've read this book, I'm understanding how you could communicate to your subconscious. So in a way, you could almost, you communicate to your subconscious, and then that almost facilitates your spirit or like the core energy. And I'm starting to see that whatever you believe in, like what you believe in, you actually start to like do it effortlessly, because we as humans, like our subconscious is like a fucking supercomputer. Like, you've always heard the term of like our computer, like our brain is like more powerful than any computer. Like
It is.
that shit never made any fucking sense to me, but now that I understand how the subconscious works and how, right, it's subconscious. You don't put conscious effort into it. It
Or
happens on its own. So the only
it's not on the
way,
forefront of your conscious soul.
yeah, so the subconscious operates by you just having faith in the subconscious. So in a way, it's like I have faith in myself. So whatever I believe in, then
The
that's the way
idea
that
of yourself. You have faith in the idea of yourself,
I have faith.
or how your being is manifesting in this world, in this existence.
Yeah, like if I want to be compassionate, if I want to be more compassionate, I just say I am compassionate. If I want to be more kind, I say I am kind. Because the subconscious only understands talking
Because
in the
thoughts
present
become things.
tense. Huh?
Thoughts become things.
Yeah, but the
And
thing
things,
is,
yeah.
when you talk to your subconscious, it has to be in the present tense. So if I say I am compassionate, my subconscious understands that. And then now when I wake up and I go on tomorrow, my brain in the background is going to be looking for ways to be compassionate. And you're
Mm-hmm.
going to start doing it in the background. Like all of a sudden you're like offering shit to give to, like, oh, do you want some of my water? Or like, did you need some extra money? Like, I know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been doing this, and it's like I literally catch myself. I'm like, oh shit. Like I would have never said that before. But now that I've been telling myself like I am compassionate and talking to my subconscious, it's like all of a sudden I'm magically being more of what I said I was,
Yeah.
what I say I am.
Sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is like I think there's a lot of invisible power. Like I think we get caught up in the conscious, but I think there's a lot that exists within us and possibly without us. That's that's something that you feel, like it's based off your feeling. Like you don't actually think about it, you feel it. Your intuition, your that gut feeling. Like I think those things really exist. But if you spend too much time just in the conscious, trying to consciously understand how that works or how to do it, you're never gonna actually get control of this like supercomputer or this like deeper, like this deeper energy that you have inside of yourself.
Yeah, you would think that that is the purpose of life, that that is our mission, that that is our end goal, is to reach a quality of existence of consciousness. You at the least, I think that's what a lot of very educated people who are in scientific pursuit for truth and for just more knowledge, I think that that is their end goal as well, is to be able to vibrate at a frequency that's just so perfect that you feel so connected to the universe and to everybody else. And that is the goal. That is like the peak of where your subconscious, where your consciousness can reach, because anything beyond that we would not be able to, not at least not in this physical form, to reach, you know. But of course that would be going into the topic of matter and physics and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think another reason I'm optimistic about, you're talking about China taking our data, and we're talking about the internet and like losing privacy, things of that sort. The reason I've become optimist on that too, it's like, why do I want to live a life where I'm going to be afraid of what possibly is to come when I don't know what's actually going to come? So I'd rather be optimistic about it. And then if I am optimistic, and if I do, I feel like when you are optimistic, then you're able to like dive deeper into yourself. So it's like the worst that can happen is that I were to die. The worst thing that could possibly happen is that if I were to die, right? But if I come to the point where I accept death, then why is it that I'm ever going to be afraid? Like,
the
why would
worst
I ever become afraid?
the worst thing that could happen is that you die and nobody remembers you or what you did.
I don't never think
because
about if people remember me.
because when you at least this is my belief. The way that you're going to leave your legacy, the way that you're going to leave your imprint on this universe, because a lot of people's goals is to exist beyond this physical existence, to exist beyond my body, to manifest the energy that is inside my body, my brain. Where does that go when we die? This form, the physical form, perishes, but how do we exist beyond our physical death? What do we do with our energy if we can still contain it, if our consciousness remains after our physical form has perished? And if we can attach that onto something like artificial intelligence, then we will live forever. We'll reach immortality. And that's like what Elon Musk is trying to do with his Neuralink thing. He would like to upload, you know, your subconscious.
Yeah, and maybe that's the way it's gonna go down, or maybe it's not. Like, I don't know, but I just know that.
People are so obsessed with playing God that it's not a surprise to me that it's already in the works. And
Yeah,
I think that I'm kind of going into like conspiracy theories, but a lot of the lack of privacy that people have in the world now, uh, it's being used for like this huge database, and it's being consumed in different ways. Some good, but some also not good. I believe that both are happening. Good things are happening in this world, but I also believe that really, really fucking evil things are also happening in this world.
yeah,
For sure. If you can imagine it, it's happening. You know?
I'm sure it will. But I mean, I'm sure that is happening. But from my experience, like I said, having the optimist lens, it allows you to go deep inside of yourself. And then you, like I said, like you get to the point where you're accepting of death. You get to the point where you're accepting of yourself. You let go of everything. You let go of being fearful, because we know that if you're afraid, you have apprehension, then that's anxiety. That's a lot of these negative chemicals in your body, which then literally start to kill you, and they hinder
They do.
your potential for growth. Because
They do.
when you're afraid of something, you stop doing whatever it is that thing like you're afraid of. So it's like I'd rather live a life where I'm constantly battling those insecurities, battling those fears, and becoming more and more fearless every single day. Because even at the end, if like there is that evil entity like waiting for me, I know that I'm gonna be most prepared if I already said like I don't give a fuck. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I already been tackling that, like that fear for like the evil entity already won if you're fucking afraid like of it all the time. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's like if people collecting our information through social media and all that, like if they're collecting it and you're afraid, then it's like, yeah, I don't know, like you fucking lose on both ends because you're afraid, but you're still using it, so you're still gonna get fucked by whatever the hell they're gonna fuck you with by collecting your information. Like the only way you would be okay, I guess, is if you just said, okay, I'm gonna completely disconnect from using the internet. I'm gonna stop using all social media. I'm gonna
But
stop doing it.
you can't. You
Yeah, you
can't.
can't.
You can't just stop and then expect your life quality to be the same, because you're changing your baseline. You're changing everything about your life when you do that, when you disconnect. And there could be a lot of negative repercussions from doing that. But I guess to like further defend my viewpoint, if I'm I'm a pessimist, which I believe I always have been, I also have to believe that there is a good side to things. And I know that for sure. I feel that with like every fiber of my being, because I have I know what it's like to be in some place super super dark mentally, of not feeling purpose to life, of not having a direction, of just being so jaded by the world and all the evil, all the bad things that are happening, you know, and then it goes all into like the depression, anxiety, and all that. If you know the bad, if you know the dark, you must also appreciate and acknowledge that there is the light, that there is good. There's two sides to it. It's light and there's dark. That's at the very core of it, if I was to ever believe in anything, it would be good and evil
I
both
agree.
exist at the same time. If you believe in one, you have to believe in the existence of the other.
Yeah, I agree. And I think naturally me having actually become, because like I said, I was more cynical and like a lot, like I would never say I was like super negative, but I was definitely a lot more cynical, and I would like, in the back of my head be judging people and all that. Like I said, it's like right now I'm literally like rewiring, like we've been talking about rewiring my brain. I'm
Mm-hmm.
rewiring my brain to be an optimist. And then at the same time, you
But in your
know,
nature, you weren't.
um,
Or do you think that that you're evolving? That you were a pessimist, but your life experiences are helping you restructure your mindset as to now be more positive than negative.
I made it a goal that I want to be happy. I told myself that there was a point, there was a specific day where I went to the park, and it was when I decided that I was going to leave my job from the eating disorder clinic. And I wrote it quite a bit stuff down. It was emotional, but I basically wrote down that on so and so date, basically the last day of the year on the 31st, that was going to be my last day at my job, and that every day beyond that I was going to pursue my dreams, the key thing being in the pursuit of happiness every single day, like for the rest of my life. And like, but it was like a defined point.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that was a very defining point. I think that might have been in November. And then ever since I left my job, that's literally been my journey, is how can I be happy? Like what can I do to be happier?
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of naturally, it's just, just I started consuming some Gary V content, if you know Gary V.
Mm-hmm.
Started watching some of his content, like a lot of the certain perspectives that he has like really resonates with me, and I started trying it out, just being compassionate, not being cynical, like just things of that sort. And I just kept practicing it, and
Positive
then
affirmations totally help. Yeah, that's a form of therapy.
mm, and then
I know
and
you
then
practice mindfulness a lot.
yeah, and then just kind of like,
That's
my
great.
brother being into like, spirituality and things of that sort. Like, he had the Genie Within book, like, it's
Mm-hmm.
his. And then after he was done reading it, one day I just went into his room, I grabbed it, I started reading it.
Spreading the gospel.
Yeah, and it was, it's all a very natural process. Like when you just listen to your gut, you listen to your intuition, you're in tune with your feelings. Like, because it's like you were saying, I think at one point you said, like, it's not a flip of a switch. I can't just be a cynical and then the next morning I wake up and I'm just completely grateful and like I'm not fucking cynical at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like it's been a
We're in a
process.
constant flux, constant state of change.
It's a constant, working towards improvement. But
Mm-hmm.
interestingly enough, like I've seen like psychological changes like in a fairly brief amount of time, because it's only really been what, 6 months since December. And legit, like the way my brain works is like, I'm not kidding, it's legitimately different. And
Mm-hmm.
but it's because like every single moment of my day I'm seeing how can I be in a state of flow. And that's one of the big concepts that I like to talk about on the podcast, is the idea of flow state. And
Mm-hmm.
just, you can get into the technicalities of things, and I think there's value in that, because that's, educating yourself is recognizing like the nuances and getting educated, but then also like just simplifying everything to the idea of flow and energy.
You also have to bear the burden of what comes with knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. And then you develop, there's an emotional response to having knowledge about suffering and having knowledge about, evil entities and things
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, once you have enough emotional or mental stability, then you could take that negative, like that sadness, and then turn that into determination to help change whatever's causing that sadness or that injustice in the world. And so, and the more you get aware with the way your mind works, then you dwell less in the negativity or in the sadness, and you rebound yourself like faster and faster and faster. And obviously, at the end of the day, you're a human being and you're probably going to have like sadness and these things for the rest of your life, but it's not a bad thing. But like I said, like the thing that fascinates me and the thing that I would have never imagined is that you have a lot of control of your mental, like the way that you perceive everything. Like in a sense, you have control of it, but you have to have gotten therapy. Like, you know, if you have depression, I'm not telling you like, oh yeah, just empty your mind and like you're fine. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to do what you're talking about. Like you have to
Just be
decompress.
positive and it'll go away.
Yeah, no, it's not it's not that simple. But
Yeah.
once you've gone through like the really fucking tough parts, and then once you get on a routine of like literally like refreshing your mind every day by like journaling, by freestyling, by doing whatever kind of free expression, then it's almost like I feel like you get to a point where your mind could legitimately be empty. Your conscious mind could be empty, so you're at peace. And then but you have all the experiences that you've done because your subconscious has an infinite capacity for memory. So now it's like you're legitimately operating like a fucking computer at a very high speed, because it's like you don't have anything that's like, you know, it's like it's almost like the conscious mind is like if I had my computer and I had like fucking 10 tabs open. You know, if you're trying to consciously think about everything, that the computer can't run that fast. But, you know, you close all the windows and now you want to do one thing, like you can do that shit super fast. So it's kind of the same thing. I see it like once you learn how to empty your mind, then you have like tremendous potential in whatever you want to do. And then you know, if we're referencing our brain to like a computer, then you add all those positive affirmation like we're talking about. That's like adding the software to your computer, and then now
Mm-hmm.
you become like a mega supercomputer. And then basically it's just like this whole process that you do throughout your whole life, I feel like.
Yeah. I would have to agree with that. Yeah. I think that was well said. If I could add maybe that the idea of adopting such a 180 um, perspective view in your life, could that at the end of the day be what was beneficial for the world? If everybody starts to be selfish in order to achieve their own individual, mind evolution, to liberate their mind, to achieve or to perform at the highest efficiency that they can by diet and exercise, and just be like a superhuman who is well educated, is super healthy, is vibrating on like some higher frequency. They're just like a more alpha species than we are, and they're the ones that are running the world, blah blah blah. Is that sort of the realm of like peak human performance that you're referring to, or is it more self-serving, um like you're trying to rewire your brain to just be optimistic and to look at the brighter side of things, to think positively while the world is burning?
No, I mean, I think in order to get to that high level that you're talking about, I think you have to be compassionate. At least that's what I'm finding out. Like, you know, like this, I'm talking about my whole change, but it's not just from like positive affirmation. It's been from having conversations with people, from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing these acts of compassion, you know, donating clothes, helping, you know, like just giving people food, you know, literally could just be text.
Altruism. Yeah.
It could literally
Yeah.
just be texting someone how they're doing. Like, I think
Mhm.
like that, like I don't know. I but another perspective that I think is interesting to think about is that, you know, not everybody's gonna be able to get to that point where I'm talking about. Like not everybody's gonna get to a level where they could empty their mind and where they kind of reach a higher level of like being, or not so much a higher level, but actualizing what was already in there to begin with. I
Mhm.
don't think everybody actualizes themselves within their lifetime, but then now I have like the idea that it's okay because maybe the possibility of like reincarnation or the like something like that could be possible. So it's like maybe you don't ever actualize
Like
yourself
why
in.
like why try, or because like you're
No, no, no,
covered
no, no.
you're
What I'm
covered for the next couple lifetimes? Another
no,
bomb went off.
huh? Oh, okay. What I'm trying to say is like not like I don't know. I mean, you could. It's just like I was talking to this guy who follows this Sikh religion, Sikh. They a lot of people who wear that turban on their head. They're
They're
like
Sikh.
from a, huh?
Mhm. They're Sikh
Yeah, Sikh. There you
or
go.
Sikh
Like
or
they're from
Sikh or
like
Sikh. Yeah.
they're from like northern India, and I think other countries follow that religion. But one thing that he was saying, he was like, in spite of like whatever your religion or whatever you believe in, he's like, we're all. This guy said, like, at the end we all get to the same destination. He said, like, you live a good, like, compassionate life, like, you get to the end of your life and you make it to that destination. But he's like, if you don't, let's say you never end up being compassionate, you're very mean or whatever, like, you just keep living life over and over and over until, like, supposedly you get it right, and then we all end up in this, like, final destination. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what the final destination is, but what I'm trying to get at is that he's talking about this idea of like living life over life over life. Like maybe some people, like if the idea of reincarnation does exist, like I could be a reincarnation of something that came before. You could be a reincarnation of someone that came before. But then, I gave this kind of idea to my brother, and then he's like, all right, well, then who the fuck's like the very, very first person? So I don't know shit. Like, I don't fucking know. I'm just talking ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think
But
if,
you're keeping your mind open to the possibility, which is awesome.
yeah, and I think the idea that like maybe you're not going to get it in this lifetime, but maybe the next, it then gives you that perspective of patience. Like, oh, I don't have to try to force this person to believe what I believe in, or I don't have to try to help this person because maybe they're just not going to get it this lifetime. Like, obviously, I'm not saying it like in a bad way, but I do believe in the idea of flow. Like, I'm sure we've all had those times where we're trying to help a friend out with something, but like the more you try to help, they become more resistant. Like, that's why I think like life is a
Mm-hmm.
very gentle art form, and like you have to go with the flow. Like you can't pressure someone to change their mind into something. Like that's only gonna close their shell more. Like, and then ultimately, like, it's not your responsibility to try to change someone's mind. Like ultimately it's gonna be
Exactly.
themselves.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just talking. I'm just
No,
talking right now.
no. I get it. I get it. It's all good. I get where you're coming from. Um, you want to be a flow master. You want to.
The thing is that it's like kind of, yes, I want to be, but at the same time it's like it's not. If I do become a master, it's not trying to be. Eventually it'll just be I am. Like, not I am a flow master, it'll be I am, like, in the present, and like I've mastered this idea of like flow, but I'm not going to be thinking to
You won't
myself
have to
like,
declare it because you'll just be it.
yeah, you don't declare whatever you are, you just are. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if you have to tell your, like you don't have to convince of something that already is already happening.
Mm, I don't know. Could you say that about racism?
What? Say what did I say?
Your Honor, if we could go back in the tapes.
Nah.
You said you don't have to convince something that something's happening when it's already happening.
Yeah, my bad. I mean, I don't know. That's, yeah, I
It doesn't
mean,
apply to all things, but in when it comes to spirituality and
well, what I'm trying to get at is that when you're actually performing the act of whatever it is that you're trying to get to, like, you're not actually thinking about it. Although in the process to get to that point, you could tell yourself that. Like, I mean, the whole subconscious thing, like I could say, I am the best, I am the best. But then when it comes to me trying to be the best at whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm not going to be thinking to myself, I am the best. Like, I've already
yeah,
put that
yeah,
into my supercomputer.
yeah. Positive self-affirmation, words of encouragement, positive. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called positive affirmation. It helps, but to an extent, because after the mindset, it's not just your attitude, it's also what your body can actually perform.
Yeah.
Do it's like what they say about talent. You know, either you got it or you don't. There's a lot of people who want to be the very best at something or to reach a certain level, but they unfortunately don't have the skill set. They don't have the mental capacity. They don't have the physical capacity. I'm not saying that to be a pessimist, but I'm saying it because it's a reality that people must also learn to accept.
And this is the
That
thing, though. This is the thing. Is that, let's say, for instance, you're 5'2", you're a male, and you say, I want to be the best basketball player alive, right? And then this would be a perfect example of what you're saying. Like, physically, you might not just be built for it. But you being the best basketball player, you're only gonna not ever feel like you're not the best basketball player if you're comparing yourself to all the other basketball players. But if you tell yourself I am the best basketball player and you become the best basketball player that you could ever become, then you are the best basketball player. Because it's only like your potential should only be in reference to yourself. You get
why
what I'm
only
saying?
yourself? Why can't you also be invested in the potential of others?
No, I mean you can be, but what I'm saying is, why is it that you would care that you're not the best of other, like compared
Mm,
to others, when
mm.
if you do want to be the best basketball player because you love it, assuming that there is like some positive emotion affiliated with it, then that's all that would matter. Like I used to think that I wanted to like go to the Olympics and stuff like that, which I still maybe one day I'll decide I want to do, but I realized that the idea of going to the Olympics was more like this like ego idea, like, oh, like, because what is the Olympics? You go there and then the whole world's watching you and you get to say that, oh, this country is better than yours. Like, if you ultimately just like the idea of competing and racing, then it doesn't matter whether you're at the Olympic race or whether if you're just at a like a local invitational. Like, right, like someone might be performing at their JV league finals, track and field, and then someone might be at the Olympic finals, and it could be the same emotional stimulation for both of them because it's all the way you want to look at it.
Yeah,
So what I'm
yeah.
trying to get at is that once you fucking forget about comparing yourself to other people, then like you get to be whatever you want to be.
Okay.
Like if that makes sense. Like I know what you're saying. Like of course like comparing yourself to other people could be reference and stuff like that. But I think that if you're doing what you love, it's more so about how you enjoy it, not so much are you going to be able to be as good as like all these other people. So for instance, that's why I got to the conclusion that I don't really care about going to the Olympics per se. I just want to run fast and I just want to be healthy and I want to have fun.
You want to be happy. You want to achieve happiness.
Yeah,
You
and if
want
if if going to the Olympics is a part of that, then that's cool, but the Olympics itself, I'm not going to use that as my drive. Like because that the Olympics is not exactly correlated to like, it's hard to explain. Like I've been through injuries and things that's the kind of way I've changed my mindset. But there could be someone who's born and says that that's what they want to do, and I'm not saying you can't live a happy life trying to get to some place. Like I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like that's just been my personal experience. I've had to shift my mind to like, yeah, just be happy, be healthy, be mindful. And then if the opportunity comes about, if it seems practical, all right, I'm gonna make it a goal to go to the Olympics.
you're preparing your mental foundation first before you can start applying
Pretty much.
your yeah
Pretty
your
much.
skills. Yeah.
You got it.
But
Yeah.
which is great because there's people who there's people who, like, for example, I know of some people who went straight into graduate programs right after college, and they have zero work experience, they have zero real world knowledge, and they it's not what they thought it was going to be, and they're doing something completely different. you know it's your life takes a lot of waves, and there's a lot of opportunities. I believe that if you have opportunities that present themselves to you, or you achieve that opportunity, you make that opportunity come to you. There's a lot of ways that things that you can go about to achieve your purpose in life. And um achieving happiness should honestly be like your legacy in life is that you were in pursuit of happiness, of feeling fulfilled because you achieved it, you know
Yeah.
self-actualization and all that.
Yeah. And some people have to go through different experiences to get to that point. You got, you mentioned Elon Musk. I like Elon Musk, and to be someone like him, he probably doesn't sleep his 8 hours a night. To be,
He doesn't need it.
yeah. I mean, because
He
when you have so much like drive, and like when it's your destiny to be the guy that you are, yeah. Sometimes you're abnormal in a lot of ways.
hey, I think that comes with what I was saying about the burden of knowledge. You know, a lot of people who are very intelligent or will score high on certain tests, or have that lifestyle of being involved in just the pursuit of truth and just gaining more education. There are things about them that are deficient, you know, whether that is that they are super smart for this thing. Elon Musk is a very, like, let's say, tech savvy, good with numbers. It's a language for him that he understands. He flows with it. It's part of him. Part of how he processes information is leagues above how I would ever approach something. Elon Musk can look at one concept, or he listens to one idea, and then he's gonna shoot one right back at you that is like, I would have never thought of that, or he knows how to find a solution. It's that type of person that also has, like I said, with the everything that where there's light, there's also dark. Elon Musk is focusing all of his energy on having human existence go beyond this planet. That's his mission in life. But his life is not perfect. There are many things about his life personally that, and you can see it. You can see it in his demeanor that are deficient. He's unhappy in ways that shouldn't be discussed, because it's personal, private stuff. But
Oh, you know him personally?
no, but like, if you follow like his career and like, because I tend to look into, like, when I read about these people who are so influential, I want to know, the psychologist in me wants to know how they were brought up and how they're treating the people that are in their lives, and how that measures to what they're accomplishing in their lives. Because if it's like, um, lawyers that are super successful and have a lot of accolades have a terrible home life sometimes, not all of them. Like, it's a duality. There's both. You can't. It's very, very hard to achieve that balance of having a great interpersonal life, social life, while also being a genius, and having a lot of success, financial, economic success. You're leaving your print on this world, but your life is the other side of the coin, which is the life that nobody really gets to see, um, is in the gutters. It's in a shithole.
Yeah.
So
And I think sometimes people think that they might be born here to do one thing, or they get obsessed with the idea of becoming really great at something. But I think a lot of times, and I don't know, I usually don't like to talk in this way of saying like people, because I actually don't know what the fuck most people goes through their mind. But from my personal observation and experience and friends that I've had, I feel like sometimes people try to do things or be things that they think they want, but it's only because that's what people have wanted to see of them, and
expectations, yeah.
other people's
Other
expectations, and
people's
then
expectations.
that's when they live a life that's very unbalanced. And
I'm super guilty of that.
you try to be something that you naturally
No,
are
you're not.
not, that you're is not actually what you love or what you're
Not
destined to
you.
do.
Yeah.
So then you don't find flow in that. Like I feel like when you're on your path, when you're kind of going align with your destiny, like, I'm not saying that life is completely like 100% fluid and there's no obstacles. Like, I think there is obstacles, But I think that when you're getting on the right path, like there should be more flow. You should be developing more flow. Like there should be a certain degree of effortlessness when you do something that you really love, you know, because otherwise you're probably using too much conscious effort to try to express what you're trying to do. And like you look at world class athletes, you look at Elon Musk, like you can't tell me those people are really thinking that hard to do what they do. Like they're just doing what they do. And of course there's certain moments that take sacrifice and conscious effort, but I think a lot of it, in particular when they're executing whatever they're executing, they're just in that state of flow, and you know, it's effortless for them. And you know, like I could think about, like, this is one example I've used. Like you look at a professional athlete, I love Messi. You look at him play soccer, and it's like the dude would not be able to play with the ball at the speed that he does and makes these magical moments if he was actually thinking about what he was doing. It's all muscle memory, it's all the subconscious mind. And
His performance, his level of performance is like ingrained into his, like his brain thinks in movements, and he has, I could say he has tons of mirror neurons which help him adapt quicker than other soccer players, I would say. I'm not sure if you're aware of what mirror neurons are, but there's this like case study where they had all these wires connected to monkeys, and they were studying mirror neurons. So there's neurons in our brain that their sole purpose is to replicate what it's like monkey see, monkey do, right? The fact that we have mirror neurons allow us to look at the actions of people who are not us. So we're able to, and monkeys have this too, it's innate. We're able to not only replicate what we see other species, other animals doing, but our mirror neurons are helping us perform it ourselves. So it's the application of that, of the firing of those mirror neurons and us using it. A lot of neuroscience-y stuff involved in like explaining it, but like the case of our Lord and Savior Messi, he's one of those creatures that, you know, just exists on that plane of that higher frequency where his mind and the execution of his body movements are just so fine-tuned, and it's something that he was pretty much born with the ability, because that's his thing, and he's a pro at it. You know, it's godlike.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what are
I
we at
don't know
right
how we
now?
got to the topic of soccer.
That's what happens when you're just going with the flow.
This is true. Yeah.
What's the time at? Do you know?
Sure.
Because I don't know. I don't see on Zoom. It doesn't tell me what.
9:17. We've been talking for 2 hours. Sorry.
No, you're good. Well, I think the podcast was set to start at 7, but I don't think we started till probably almost 7:30, right? With all the
Yeah.
technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But then, even if we started at 7:30, we're nearly at 2 hours. So this would go down as the second longest podcast on the Art of Human.
Wow. What was the personal record?
2 podcasts ago with Cheyenne Goldbreeze.
Oh, right.
Went 2 hours and 15 minutes.
How you feeling? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, but I do feel kind of hungry.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of hungry too, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, anybody who's listening to this, if you've made it this far into the podcast, very thankful. And I mean, I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope there's been some insightful information. Johanna, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Always welcome to have you back on. And I guess I'll finish with just one last question so that you can maybe give some last perspective to the listeners. If you could talk to the entire human race, assuming that it would be translated for everybody to understand, what would be your final message? You know what? Let's put it even higher stakes on it. Let's just say, like, these are legit your final words, and after that you're vanishing right now. Like there's not gonna be like, you're done right now. Like after this message, like you're done. So this is the last little chapter in your legacy.
Oh gosh, final words. Put me on the spot. I'll probably just say I love you.
All right. That's good. I like it. Simple.
Well, it's personalized,
Yeah.
Even though I don't know you, I'll never know you. I still love you.
I like that. All right, everybody. You heard it here. Johanna loves you. Johanna loves you. All right. Thank you guys. Goodbye.
Peace.
All right. I think I could just stop recording.